So today we're talking about natural solutions for mental health and where to get started. Because so many people reach out to me either in our Facebook group, where you can go to drroseann.com/group, or they DM me on Instagram or get a hold of me in some way, shape, or form. And they want to talk to me about what should they start with? What's the best thing to do? And there are a lot of ways to start. And there really is no wrong path. You have to do what's authentically aligned with you and your family and your values, as well as you gotta be consistent. I think it's not the starting, it's the constancy that is the issue. So let's dive in. Let's talk about how I work with people in the decision tree. And when people fly out in our one-to-one program, which you can go to drroseann.com/help, if you're looking for one-to-one support, no matter where you are in your journey, we'll give you a solution matcher and guide you to the right solution. But when people come to me, the first thing I do is identify the main behaviors, right? So ADHD, anxiety, depression, what does that mean? That is unique to each person. There are clinical components of it that some level is consistent across, right? But I don't know 2 kids with ADHD that look alike, and I pretty much never see brains that look alike with ADHD. I mean, exactly the same. I recently had 2 brothers, with ADHD that I had to write on every page what their name was. Their brain looks so much alike. I don't think that's ever happened to me. But their behaviors were actually different. And, one is more unfocused and one is more crabby and irritable. So it was really interesting. So you got to identify the main behaviors. What are those behaviors? Like if you had to break it down to 3 behaviors that you feel like, wow, these are the drivers. Okay. So let's do an example, right? So recently I have somebody with anxiety and ADHD and learning problems, dyslexia. And so there's a lot, right? So I was like, what are the most troublesome? So it was actually getting aggressive with the brother is the most troublesome, right? And doesn't show up pretty much anywhere else according to them, but I've seen it happen with the parents too. So we're just going to go with what they said. And then, uh, faster processing, right? Some kids, even with those learning challenges, process beautifully, no problem. And other kids, maybe it's listening. Who knows what it is? But let's break down. I try to narrow it down to 3 and think about the 3 that are most impactful. Maybe it is the ones that annoy you the most. But think about which are those nexus ones, as I like to say. So, and if you're unsure, keep a journal. Keep a journal, write it down. It could be a hand little book and journal, which I carry a journal around. It could be the note section of your phone, and try to be detached and look at it, right? So then what's your next thing? You want to investigate your options, right? So a lot of people join our Facebook group, drroseann.com/group to start looking at natural options. I also have a lot of seasoned people in there, but what are your options? Are you thinking about supplements? Are you thinking about going to a therapist? If you're thinking about going to a therapist, go to a therapist. Are you thinking about, taking a course? A lot of people have taken our executive functioning course and said that it was like, I had a mom recently said, "Is it possible that was a lot better than any therapist I went to?" And she lives in an area that's pretty rural. And I said, "Yeah, it is possible." And she meant it not in a way that all therapists are bad. She just had never learned as much as she had there. And I was like, well, that's why I'm Dr. Roseann. A lot of experience, right? Watch the episode on why you need an experienced provider. So think about what your options are. Again, write it down, right? In our calm brain community, we are diving into all of the options at a very deep level. And that may be something you want to do. You want to go back, listen to the series. I have tons of series on, ADHD or neurofeedback, whatever it is, whatever you're thinking about, look at it, right? And then let's look at what the research says, right? But number one, all of my work, it's calm brain, happy family. We've got to calm and regulate the brain. If you have a child who is emotionally dysregulated in any way, shape, or form, learning is not going to stick. Let's say that again. If you have a child who's dysregulated in any way, shape, or form, learning is not going to stick. So it's something I talk about all the time. And you want to make sure that's where you're honing on. It doesn't matter if your kid is unfocused. We have to regulate that brain, and a calm brain is regulated, right? And then whatever we're picking, right? We want to have a constancy. This is where I already alluded to this. Not alluded to, I already yelled at you this. This is where people make their biggest mistake, right? I think there's two parts in that mistake. It's that believing there is a magic wand miracle and something is quick, it's going to come in, but also I can do it for a short amount of time and it should work, or it did work for a little bit. Now I'm not going to do it, right? Sometimes people get on an airplane to me and I'm like, what worked? I'm like, well, this worked and this worked. I was like, well, why'd you stop doing it? They're like, well, I don't want to have to do it all the time. Well, our kids need more support. So that is really important. So we're going to start with, if you can, one natural solution and focus on it for 30 days. Now, if you're a jump in the deep end kind of girl like me and you're working with a provider who guides you to more, that's okay. But if you're doing this on your own, pick one thing, right? Because otherwise it's going to feel very overwhelming and it needs that level of constancy, right? So if you're choosing our multi-mag brain formula, you can go to drroseann.com/magnesium. Go back and listen to the magnesium series. I love that magnesium series, and there'll be more and more with physicians who are talking about the brain benefits and mental health benefits of magnesium. But if it's magnesium, you're going to pick the one thing and stick with it. And it's really 30 days, people. And it doesn't mean you stop, right? People sometimes, I get these miraculous changes in our brain behavior reset program, and they're like, well, I can just stop everything, right? And I'm like, no, like you still want to eat healthy. You still want to, breathe every day. You want to do all of those things. So remember, we have to calm the brain and then change behavior. There's not one or the other, it's both. Okay. And that is hard and that requires, I know you're working hard, but it's about working smarter and not harder. And that's important. So I'm going to give you my 3 simple steps to better behavior. Go back and listen to the different episodes. But in order to change behavior, right, I have 3 simple steps. And it requires constancy. So number 1, you're going to pick that one behavior, just like you picked one natural supplement. You're going to pick the one behavior, you're going to reinforce it, and you're going to be constant. So when we pick one behavior, we're really clear on the effects of our effort. We're also providing constant reinforcement. What does reinforcement look like? Because that's what a lot of parents ask me. So you want to reinforce the attempt to do it. So, and then you want to be as constant as possible. So, for example, let's say you had somebody that was aggressive and verbally aggressive. So you want to say like, wow, like you were able to pull out of that really quick. What was different than before, right? You're not going to do it when they're mad. And you're like, what do you mean, Dr. Rowe? You're reinforcing that they were less verbally aggressive? Yeah, because their brain doesn't know to not do that. And you then want to teach them about, well, what's different? Why was this easier this time? That's important to be able to help them to see their own strengths, their own powers. But in order to really reinforce, you've got to just do it at a high level. And you want to be constant in 30 days. 30 days is really sort of the minimum for change to happen. And I know you say, oh, I do this all the time. Sometimes we catch ourselves, we know that you're not being constant. But when it comes to natural solutions, you want to weigh your options. You want to really think about what's going to be best for my kid, what's going to be best for my family, what's the logical part about it? Is it a supplement, my kid will take, how hard is it to get? Is it neurofeedback and I have to, work remotely with Dr. Rowe, whoever it is we're going to do breath work together? Are we going to do exercise together? Whatever you're doing, you're going to pick it. You're going to think about all the options, but what you're doing isn't working. And I'm going to tell you the Einstein quote. The definition of insanity is do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So, this is about stepping into the science. This is about stepping into what works. So, look in the show notes. There's going to be an awesome free guide on how to get started with natural solutions. You really want that. I created it in this way that is incredibly helpful. This is just a tiny snippet. There's a lot more in there. There's stuff about food. There's all kinds of things. And that can be a great place to start too with food, but also know that for many families, it feels very overwhelming. So just get started, pick one behavior, get going, and tell me how many awesome things are happening.